Hey, good evening, folks. It's Thursday, November 12th. Time for a reflection, finally. Just as I was planning on leaving for lunch this afternoon, my phone rang, and since my caller ID said a name that I recognized right away, I answered the call. And since this person and I haven't talked in a while, we did that usual typical greeting dance. You know the one. He asked, "How are you and Joan doing? How's the church doing? Are you doing live worship, in-person worship, or are you still doing virtual worship?" And of course, I answered all of his questions and then followed up the dance with my side of the dance. "And how are you doing? What's new and exciting in your life?" Well, then he offered some answers. He responded that with the slowdown in his profession because of COVID-19, he's now taken on a second job and he's working out at David Grant Hospital. And I said, "That's really kind of fun and exciting. What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, that's really important. The reason I called is to give you some news, some important news." Now, I need to tell you, first of all, that I'm not going to use his name at all because he's still in the process of telling people this news. So I will honor his request and keep him anonymous. But his news is too good not to share. And now you need to give a little bit more background information. I have known my friend for a number of years now. It's probably going on 10, maybe more. And our conversations have always been a deep conversation, and then they always move into a theological emphasis. He wants to talk about his faith, and I know he is a person of deep faith. And he has been discerning where God is leading him and calling him into a ministry. Now, he wasn't willing to use those words at first, but I kept saying, "So, sounds like you're being called into a ministry." And he finally relented. He started the recent chapter of ministry as a volunteer chaplain and a worship team member of his congregation. He shared with me about 2 years ago that he really wanted to connect with a high school youth director who would allow him to design and lead worship with the youth group on a regular basis. But nothing came of that, which was okay because he just kept connecting with other people. And one of the pastors in his congregation does worship on Sunday afternoons, it seems like, in places like rest homes, rehab centers. And there's even somebody who's doing worship at the prison. And he is connected with all of them, and he is involved in leading worship there. He really loves doing what he's doing. Now, from time to time, we've talked about this path of ministry, and I've always encouraged him to listen to the voice of God as he goes forward. And today he honored me by once more saying that I am one of his mentors. I was happy to hear that, and it warms my heart. My joy increased when he told me that what has been taking place in the last couple of months, it seems that another mentor, a pastor within the congregation where he worships, contacted the district officials for that expression of faith and began a conversation about my friend being considered as an ordained pastor within that tradition. This came as a shock to him, since he grew up in a mainline denomination where the path to ordained ministry is much like mine. 4 years of college, 4 years of seminary, so that you end up with a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in theology, master's degree in ministry or something like that. This was not his path. And while he accepted the ordination, he wondered if it was right. He felt that he didn't know enough. He didn't have the necessary book learning and might have short-circuited the training time. Now, I told him, to be honest with you, I probably would have agreed with him a couple of years ago, maybe even further back than that. That I thought you needed to have book knowledge to become a pastor. You need to have the college foundation and then the seminary experience before you can be ordained. It's just the way it's supposed to be. And there goes Tevye singing in my head, tradition. But is that the case for all pastors? Now, as I said, I certainly do want pastors to have a deep knowledge of the Bible, a foundation in classical theology, an understanding of church history, and be grounded in counseling. But is there another way to accomplish those benchmarks? A good case could be made that the early disciples, including Paul, didn't have all those boxes checked on their form before they were allowed to go out and preach and teach and start congregations. Now, when my friend repeated again that he always felt he would be ordained someday, just not this way, I asked why. Why are you limiting God and how God can act? Why are you limiting God to a single path of calling and ordaining you? Doesn't that limit God, whom we both say is without limits? Now, even as I was saying those words, I thought about my own understanding. So I told him that as I've gotten old, I've imagined God working outside the path we both saw. After all, God calls Saul with a blinding light. God called Peter, James, and John with nets overflowing with fish at a time that fish weren't supposed to be caught. God calls Thomas when he's in the midst of deep doubt. God calls Moses, who tries to back out of the call by saying, I really can't speak very well, so don't send me. God calls David to be the king when he's a young lad. God calls with loud voices and silent whispers sometimes. So I said to my friend, I don't see everyone being called down the same path anymore, the same narrow path anymore. Perhaps you can see that God is calling you and has been calling you and taking you on a different road to this moment called ordination. So now I'm wondering about the rest of you who are listening, not seeking ordination, but seeking to hear God speak. Are you willing to see God calling you out of a box you've lived in for years? Is God taking you down a road different from the road others take in your growth in discipleship? Is God growing you in a way that is different from what you've expected? Well, here's the good news. God doesn't work the same way with everyone. I told my friend that I'll celebrate with him when we can have that public moment of the ordination vows, or I'll celebrate with him when he can simply announce to the world that he has joined the same union that I've been in for 39 years now, the Union of Ordained Pastors. Hey, I look forward to seeing you folks on Sunday. And as I've said before, Jesse's going to hold up a sign every once in a while saying, look up, because I need to look at the camera, not at the pictures out here. But until we see each other on Sunday, please, please, please wash your hands a couple times a day, 20 seconds at a crack. After you've washed them that many times and they become dry, please use some hand lotion to make them nice and soft again. Stay home if you're not feeling well. Wear your mask, please. Be careful in how you gather now. It doesn't seem like it's the gatherings at restaurants or nail salons and beauty parlors. It might be gathering at home when people from outside the area are coming in that's helping to spread COVID-19. It's a scary thought, especially with Thanksgiving coming up. I don't know how to do about it. I'm just hoping that all of us will be smart. So that's why it's important to wear that mask, especially when you're around others. Keep that distance, that physical distance, when you can. And of course, always, be careful out there. Sergeant Esterhaus dismisses me every day since March 15th with those words ringing in my head. So I've got a tradition, and I've got an Esterhaus. See you Sunday.